Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to join the 2022 Donor Research Network and Ethics Symposium. My name is Yonghui Ma. I'm from Xiamen University. I had a clinical medicine background and a PhD on bioethics. Today, I would like to talk about the ethical issues in fecal microbiota transplantation. When I say hello to everybody, I also greeting to the microbiota on and the inside of yourself. We are actually more microbe than man. And everybody is actually a super ecosystem or super organism, which is very different from the traditionally believed individual. What if someone tell you this facts, or you may sound very absurd, but actually this has been proved true by the scientific knowledge generated in the last decades. You are only 10% human, you are a super organism, you are your microbes, and follow your gut. People even say that being human is a gut feeling. You have a second brain in your gut, and our poop can even be medicine or valuable commodity. In the last decades, the scientific knowledge about the microbiome is rising very rapidly. It's actually exploding. We can see from the Cell, Nature, Science, Immunity, those high-profile scientific journals have published large volumes of gut microbiome research. The growth of gut microbiota studies from 2000 to 2020 is rising very quickly, and also some bigger major countries have increased their investment into the gut microbiota related companies and research. What is gut microbiota? Humans are viewed as composites of human and microbial cells. Human microbiota are complex and dynamic microbial communities composed mainly of bacteria, but also includes protozoa, archaea, virus, and fungi that resides in and on different body niches such as oral cavity, throat, esophagus, stomach, respiratory tract, and skin. Our gut microbiota contains tens of trillions of bacteria, 10 times more cells than in our body. There are more than 3 million microbial genes in our gut microbiota, which is 150 times more genes than in the human genome. Microbiota in total can weigh up to 2 kilograms. The communities in our microbiome carry out a variety of functions which are vital to not only our health and well-being, but also our very survival. Exploration of the human microbiome has become a reality due to the availability of powerful metagenomics and metatranscriptomic analysis technologies. So people say in terms of its importance, people say it's like a forgotten organ or virtual organ, and also because it has their own neural system, it could be viewed as second brain. And in terms of diversity, people say it's actually a rainforest in our gut, and microbiome genome is our very second genome, but our understanding and knowledge of human microbiome is still in very early stage. We only know a tip of iceberg of the knowledge of gut microbiome. In 2007, in the United States, there's they launched the Human Microbiome project in the hope of development of a reference set of 3,000 isolate microbiome genome sequences, and also to answer the questions, find the answers to the questions of whether there is a co-microbiome at each site, determine the relationship between disease and changes in the human microbiome, development of new tools and technologies for computational analysis, establishment of a data analysis and coordinating center and resource banks. There's also a sub project led by Professor bioethicist Rosamund Rhodes, examination for ethical, legal, and social implications. We actually had a webinar at the end of 2017 trying to compare the ethical issues in the United States and China in relation to the human microbiome research. On the same year, in the EU, there's also the Meta-Hate project financed by the European Commission under the 7th FP program. In 2016, just before the Barack Obama stepped down, he launched the National Microbiome Initiative. The new National Microbiome Initiative aims to advance microbiome science in ways that will benefit individuals, communities, and the planet. There's 3 goals: supporting interdisciplinary research, developing platform technologies, and expanding the microbiome workforce. Also, in 2016, a group of Chinese scientists launched the Chinese Microbiome Project, aiming to find the relationship between health, disease, and our microbiome. Due to the complex symbiotic relationship between our gut microbiota and their hosts, alteration of microbial composition can directly disrupt the physiologic functions. Evidence has been found that associates a number of GI, gastrointestinal, and non-GI disease with changes in gut microbiota. For example, like inflammatory bowel disease and Crohn's disease, IBS, enteric infections, liver diseases, and HE, obesity, diabetes, and other metabolic syndromes, autism, autoimmune disorders, and allergies, and some neurological conditions such as Parkinson's disease. Therefore, it is widely believed that we can improve or prevent some pathological conditions by manipulating the microbiota instead of, for example, identifying a pathogen and relying on antibiotics to eliminate it. Therefore, the fecal microbiota transplantation looks like a promising treatment modality. Among other interventions targeting the intestinal microbiota, the rationale behind FMT has been to introduce a complete, stable community of gut microorganisms to repair or replace the disrupted native microbiota. FMT represents a promising and reportedly effective therapeutic alternative for restoring healthy gut microbiota, especially in treating CDI. CDI, we know, is a severe condition which causes more than 250,000 hospitalizations and kills an estimated 14,000 people in the US each year. An increasing number of studies have investigated the wider application of FMT, showing it to be effective in treating other conditions such as IBD, IBS, obesity, and many others. So there's a growing enthusiasm and passion to expanding the indications of FMT among the doctors and patients. The potential of FMT in treating GI and non-GI diseases is also looks very promising. FMT refers to infusion of a fecal suspension from a healthy individual. This individual normally being pre-screened by questionnaires and also the blood test, fecal test, into the GI tract of another person to help to re-establish the functioning microbiota system and cure a specific disease, normally via the nasogastric tube, upper tract endoscopy, colonoscopy, and enema. Why FMT becomes so popular? Obviously, because its rapid effect is actually taking effect very quickly. I spent 2 weeks time in the second hospital affiliated to Nanjing Medical University. It had the gut microbiota center has claimed they have treated more than thousands of people with gut problems. I interviewed some patients there which has received FMT, and they all claim it has the very miracle effect. And it's perceived as low cost because the donors, people think the healthy donors are everywhere, and they can produce the healthy gut microbiota. No report of serious adverse effect, minimal risk, and people believe they can avoid exposure to antibiotics, and people think it will re-establishment a balanced gut microbiota, and is widely perceived as natural and organic. And also the media coverage portray FMT as miracle. There are also many studies suggesting the clinical effect of FMT in treating CDI is very promising. It's very obvious, positive. And the media coverage and the social enthusiasm is rising. We can see there's people saying one man's poop is another man's medicine. Doctor perform Singapore's first fecal transplant. And in China, actually, so far there are more than 100 hospitals has more than that performed FMT on patients with varieties of diseases, and some patients even perceive FMT like a panacea. Here it reads the son's fecal microbiota has cured the father's stomach pain for 8 years. 8 years pain stomach pain. The history of FMT can actually dating back to 1,700 years ago. During the Dongjing dynasties, there's a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, Ge Hong. He has published. He has a book. Its book is about emergency medicine, and in the book, it recorded that people can actually drink the yellow dragon soup. When he called yellow dragon soup, is actually he's referring to the fecal suspension, and it says the yellow dragon soup can cure serious diarrhea and vomiting. The methodology of FMT is straightforward. First, the donor selection. Donors are normally coming from the family members or friends or anonymous volunteers. They have to go through the rigorous screening of pathogens and infections. then the preparation of FMT material, the routes of administration, adverse events. There's a very insufficient long-term follow-up data. This picture was taken from the second affiliated hospital of Nanjing Medical University in Nanjing. The doctors are performing FFMT on their patients. The characteristics of FMT, it looks like an innovative intervention. It's still an unproven and exploratory treatment. Its therapeutic mechanism is still unknown. Our understanding about the composition types of gut microbiome community is very limited. It is unknown what strategies should be employed to prepare the patient for transplantation. It is unknown what quantity and type of organism should be used and how the treatment might be delivered. So it looks like a shotgun approach. There is a large discrepancy between the low-key technology used in this treatment and the sophisticated knowledge of intestinal microbiome. There are also a series of ethical, legal, and social issues surrounding FMT. There are clinical issues, and there are also the uncertainties associated with potential impact of FMT, whether it has long-term impact on the mortality and health on patient or on young people, young child. Privacy protection and confidentiality issues. There are also the conceptual and philosophical implications. For example, what if we know that half of our cells are actually not our human cells, it's microbiome cells? It can also have implications on autonomy, self, otherness, this concept. There are also fairness and justice issues, legal issues, and regulations. What's for example, like what's the nature of a human microbiome? Is it a biological product, or it's a medicine, or it's a drugs, or it's organs? How to regulate fecal microbiota transplantation under the drug system or under transplant system? FMT ethics lies at the intersection of clinical research and organ transplantation. These are two very ethically contentious areas. Each has a set of ethical and social implications that are already highly complicated. They are further compounded by the practice of FMT. In relation to clinical research and therapy, FMT represents another therapeutic option to which patients or subjects who fail to respond to other treatments may be driven by hope and desperation. These raise questions about the limitations of our knowledge and understanding of the new procedures and access to experimental treatment results, as well as the extent of the risks involved. In relation to organ transplantation, FMT shares some of the ethical concerns raised by the problem of supply, demand, and appropriate allocation of available resources. I have identified the ethical issues in the 5 main areas. The first one, informed consent and the vulnerability of patients. I will go through one by one. Informed consent to FMT may be extremely difficult to obtain due to the vulnerability and desperation of patients, the untested nature of the treatments, and the shortage of information on potential side effects, particularly in relation to mood and behavior. Because there's studies on the gut-brain axis that suggest that there are microbiomes related to mood and behavior. So the transplant of fecal microbiota may carry the risk of transplant of anxiety and depression. IBD is a chronic idiopathic condition, and its target population mainly comprises of young adults. Patients with acute or refractory IBD are particularly vulnerable due to their healthcare experiences with ineffective therapies and subsequent poor quality of life, both of which may increase the propensity to make healthcare decisions based solely on desperation. And there are also other sources of vulnerability, like their nutritional deficiency. People are at higher risk of developing mental and psychological conditions. Patients' autonomy may be compromised by their stress and desperation, affecting their ability to give informed consent. So these people may become susceptible to deception or inducement. Undue influence and overhyped claims for the therapeutic effects of FMT may further complicate the IBD patient's decision to seek treatment. Desperate to believe in a potential effective therapy, patients may disregard the safety and risks of new or unproven therapies. The second problem is related to how to determine what is a suitable healthy donor. Working out how to define, identify, and source optimal donors has become a pressing clinical demand and a research area worthy of multidisciplinary investigation. There are two dimensions implied in the concept of suitable healthy donor, the ideal or optimal donor and the healthy donor. Since currently the selection of donors for FMT is mainly based on exclusion criteria, because there's no immunological matching system between the donor and the recipient. There's no agreed conceptual definition of a suitable healthy donor for FMT. Fundamentally, since we don't know what constitutes an optimal microbiota profile due to the current limited knowledge about gut microbiota, we are unable to identify which healthy individuals are the optimal donors for patients with targeted diseases. Currently, the strict and evolving screening standards present a severe constraint to donor numbers at present. A number of different FMT donor screening protocols have been published and implemented globally, such as the FMT Working Group, the Joint Society Letter to FDA, current consensus guidance on donor screening and stool testing for FMT, and the Amsterdam Protocol. There are inconsistencies between the protocols in terms of requirements for particular tests and for the timing and the interval frequency of such tests. Then I want to raise a question. Does anyone have a healthy microbiome? Or is there a healthy microbiome? It's entirely possible there is no healthy microbiome, or perhaps there are many healthy microbiomes. The microbiome is complex, varied, even ever-changing and context-dependent. Healthy microbiomes can easily turn rogue because of if it resides in different locations. Unhealthy microbiomes can be normal, even necessary. For example, pregnant women in their third trimester have a similar microbiome to those with metabolic syndrome. Enthusiasm for manipulating microbiome because it is perceived the microbiome could theoretically be altered through probiotics, prebiotics, and FMT, the only organ that can be replaced without surgery. But how can you tell when it needs replacing? This quest for a healthy microbiome has led people to take measures that are far more extreme than simply spewing up yogurt, but it carries risks. Current research suggests FMT is safe and no serious adverse events have been reported, but there are many areas in which evidence is lacking and further investigation is needed. People believe FMT nature organic and therefore safer, but with skepticism. There are clinical research, transmission of pathogens, transfer of multiple viral lineage, social and legal risks like microbial fingerprints may raise the privacy breaches. We'll get onto the privacy issues later. And there are also mental and psychological risks, emotions, behavior, personality alterations, potential transmission of anxiety and depression. Now, many research have suggested there's an interactive relationship between gut microbiota and the central nervous system in regulating moods and behavior, influencing brain function and behavior. These studies raise the question of whether FMT might alter the neurological state of recipients. Brain impacts the gut, and the gut can also impact the brain. Whether and how to extend screening programs in order to mitigate these risks. 3 questions need to be asked. The first, whether FMT donors should be screened not only for pathogens but for a history of psychiatric and psychological illnesses like mood disorders. Secondly, by manipulating the gut microbiota, FMT could be used as a way to affect the brain and consequently scalping behavior. Third, by transferring mind-altering microbes, FMT carries the possibility of altering a person's personality and even identity. Our current categorization of FMT as nature and organic and therefore safer may be premature and naive. There are also the privacy issues. Studies have found that personal microbiomes contain enough distinguishing features to identify an individual over time. Change in the microbiome could be indicative of past behaviors. Travel to particular regions could change a person's microbiome by introducing new bacteria unique to a specific place. Sexual habits can affect the microbiome of the penis, making it possible to trace a man's sexual behavior, sexual orientation by obtaining a sample of his genital microbiome. In medicine, changes in gut microbiome have been found associated with disease susceptibility. For example, the inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, and arthritis. It might also be possible to identify ethnicity, race, socioeconomic background, and nationality by analyzing samples of someone's microbiome. There is still a lack of scientific consensus on whether human microbiome data is uniquely identifying like human genetic data. Human microbiome can be easily affected by changes in diet, lifestyle, medication, time, and environmental factors. It is also highly possible that information generated from an individual's microbiome profile at a specific time is not identifying at a later point of time. But there is the risk of privacy breaches. When a human microbiome profile is combined with human genetic and other types of information, this could generate unprecedented personal revealing information of a new magnitude, travel experience, sex practice, and consumption of alcohol and drugs. So we advocate a precautionary approach towards the validity of any conclusions regarding undisclosed identification of individuals or links to disorders. Human microbiome research may raise concern about possible social stigma, discrimination, stereotyping, and abuse of information against certain groups. Our very unique microbiome fingerprints can reveal a large volume of our very sensitive and personal informations, like mobile phones carry owners' bacteria fingerprints. Discrimination and stigmatization surrounding mental illness and neurological disorders is still widely prevalent in many societies. We raise the concerns that microbiome research data may be prematurely or incorrectly interpreted regarding like susceptibility to mental or metabolic disorders or the ethnic background of the patients. Physicians and scientists need to exercise caution when handling and interpreting this information. Finally, there's also the commercialization and potential abuse of FMT. Can fecal microbiota profile be patented? What about the optimal microbiota profile or disease-targeted fecal microbiota profile? How should we think about ownership and property rights relating to various aspects of FMT? There are also the direct-to-consumer of FMT, internet posting and doing DIY home protocols, which we will foregoing standard medical care and the guidance of professionals. Patients put their safety at risk. And this DIY toolkit also gave consumers the false impression that a quick fix can undo poor lifestyle decisions. We have discussed this commercialization and hype issue in another publications by me and my colleagues. There are also increasing FMT-related biobanks has been established globally because physicians do not have consistent, easy access to healthy stool. So the FMT stool bank, they can provide frozen preparations of screened and filtered human stool for use in FMT therapies and also for the research use. For example, like the Open Biome and Advancing Bio in the USA, the Mount Clinic in the UK, the Netherlands Donor Feces Bank, and the Chinese FMT Bank. The recruitment of fecal donors for FMT banks can also present challenges, with only a small percentage of those enrolling ultimately serving as a donor. And these are some of the microbiome companies. Now I think I can just wrap up here. FMT has the potential to be an innovative, low-tech, and inexpensive approach to effectively treating a variety of diseases. The social, ethical, and legal implications of FMT therapy, however, are complex and worthy of careful consideration by health professionals and regulatory bodies. Patients' desperation is not a reason to provide this treatment. Safety and the protection of vulnerable patients should be primary consideration. More clinical trials are necessary to study the potential of FMT for treatment of disorders other than CDI. We have to proceed with caution in any such microbial intervention involving the introduction or removal of bacteria, especially when we don't know the long-term impacts of combinations of interacting microbiome. Authorities should prioritize the development of appropriate governance of and safe mechanisms for oversight and regulation of microbiome-based treatment. Trust between physicians and patients, as well as from the public, is also essential for future appropriate use of FMT. These are the studies we have done for the past couple of years. We have examined the ethical issues in fecal microbiota transplantation, and we have done some empirical study on how Chinese clinicians face the ethical and social challenges in fecal microbiota transplantation. And we also examined the ethical and social issues in biobanking for human microbiome, and also the oral microbiome and the management of dental disease, and also the human microbiome research in general. All right. In dreams, poppy is actually a symbol of money, and we think the year of microbiome research has come now. If you have any questions, just email me. Thank you very much for your patience. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day.